Hey, welcome. Today we are diving into a huge topic, but one that really does affect every single one of us, the Constitution. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, a long, dry, dusty document, right? But I want you to see it in a whole new light. Think of it as a society's ultimate rulebook, the most important game plan we've got. So let's dig in and figure out how this thing actually works.
But before we do, let's just start with a simple question. I want you to imagine, just for a second, a world where the people in charge, presidents, prime ministers, anyone with real authority, had zero rules to follow. What would that even look like? What would possibly stop them from doing whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted?
And that question, well, it leads us right here to our first section, imagining a world without rules. You see, to really get why a constitution is so critical, you first have to understand the chaos it was designed to prevent.
And this, right here, gets to the heart of it. This phrase from the legal scholar A.V. Dicey warns of a government run by the arbitrary will of power-hungry men and women. Now, arbitrary, that just means random, unpredictable, based on a whim. It's a system where your rights, your freedom, even your safety could literally change from one day to the next, all depending on the mood of whoever's in charge. This lays out the difference perfectly. On the one hand, you have the rule of man, where rulers are above the law and their power is absolute. But on the other hand, you have the rule of law, where everyone is subject to the same law. That's the game-changing shift. Suddenly, power is limited and predictable, and your rights are protected by the system itself, not just by the goodwill of a leader. This is the exact problem constitutions were built to solve.
So, if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, that brings us to the idea of a set of rules that can't be easily changed or ignored by anyone. That solution is the ultimate rulebook.
So, what is a constitution really? At its core, it's the fundamental and supreme law of a society. Some legal experts even call it the Grundnorm, which basically means the super law. Think of it like the foundation of a house. Every other law, every single one, has to be built on this foundation. If a new law clashes with the Constitution, it's invalid. Simple as that.
You know, another really powerful way to think about it is as a social contract. This isn't just some rulebook handed down from on high. No, it's an agreement. It's a deal between the people who govern and the people who are governed. The government gets its authority from the people, but in return, it promises to follow the rules laid out in the Constitution. It's absolutely a two-way street.
Okay, so we've got this rulebook, but how does it actually, work? How can a piece of paper control the incredible power of a state? This section is all about the mechanics of keeping that power in check.
And we're back to this central idea, the rule of law. This is the engine that makes the whole system run. It's this pretty radical idea that the law is king, not the people in charge. It means the rules apply to everybody, from the average person on the street all the way up to the highest leader in the land. No one gets a free pass.
And this whole concept? It really boils down to three key pillars.
First up is the supremacy of law. This just means that predictable, established law is in charge, not the random whims of a ruler. Second, you have equality before the law. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or how much money you have, the law applies to you exactly the same as it does to everyone else. And third, there's justice. The law can't just be some tool for control, it has to be an instrument that serves a just government.
But even with those principles, there's still a big risk, right? What if one single group gets control of making the laws, enforcing the laws, and interpreting the laws? Well, to prevent that, constitutions use a very clever design trick. You separate the power.
Typically, that power is split into three branches. You've got the legislature, think Parliament or Congress. Their job is to make the laws. Then there's the executive, led by a president or prime minister, who is responsible for carrying out and enforcing those laws. And finally, you have the judiciary, the court system, and their job is to interpret the laws. I just love this analogy because it perfectly captures how these branches are supposed to work together. They're like three stones holding up a cooking pot. Each one has its own crucial job, but they all depend on each other to keep the whole system stable and balanced. If one stone gets too big or is taken away, the whole pot just falls over. This is what we call checks and balances. So, the Constitution sets up the government and keeps its power under control. But it does something else that is just as important. It protects you. Let's talk about the most personal part of this rulebook, your fundamental rights.
Now, this idea is so important, so please pay close attention here. A constitution doesn't give you rights. It doesn't hand them out like a gift from the state. Instead, it recognizes that you were born with them. They are inherent to you as a human being. The Constitution's job is just to write them down and make sure nobody, especially the government, can take them away.
So what kind of rights are we talking about? Well, they're the things that are absolutely essential for a free and dignified life. The right to a fair trial, so you can't just be locked up without a reason. The freedom to speak your mind. The right to be treated as an equal. The freedom to gather peacefully with others. And of course, the absolute protection from torture. These are the lines that the state can never cross.
Okay, so we have the rules, we have the rights, but who makes sure everyone actually plays by the rules? Who is the referee in this whole game? That brings us to the final, crucial piece of this puzzle, the guardian of the rulebook.
And that guardian is the judiciary. It's that third branch of government we were just talking about. Its whole purpose is to be the impartial referee, making sure the other two branches, the legislature and the executive, don't overstep their authority and that the rights of everyday people are protected. They are the ultimate defenders of the Constitution.
But listen, a referee can only be impartial if they are truly independent. So how do we guarantee that? Well, constitutions build in all these safeguards. Things like making sure judges are appointed based on merit, not politics. They're given security of tenure, which means they can't be fired for making an unpopular decision. And they have financial autonomy, so angry politicians can't threaten to cut their salaries. All of this allows them to make decisions based only on the law without fear or favor.
So let's bring it all home. A constitution is so much more than just a legal document. By setting up the rule of law, separating powers, and protecting our fundamental rights, it creates the very foundation for a society that can be free, just, and democratic. It's the blueprint for how we all agree to live together.
But here's the thing. A rule book is just a piece of paper. It only has real power if the players, both the government and the citizens, agree to respect it and live by it. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This rulebook doesn't just belong to lawyers and politicians. It belongs to us, the people. So the real question is, how do we make sure it's always being followed? That's a question for all of us to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.